Joining us now from Washington, D.C., Senator John McCain. Senator McCain, how are you this morning?
Fine, Bruce. How are you?
So far, so good. You made some comments the other day, and obviously, if we can jump right into this, by the way, I want to do that.
Sure,
I know we're pressed for time. Obviously, with the change in leadership in Afghanistan, although there's a change of leadership, the president emphasized, and everyone has emphasized all along, no change in policy. And I got the sense with some of your comments, you want to have more of a discussion about the policy.
I do, and I also want to see a larger change in the team over there. Our ambassador is not doing the job that we want, and of course, their special envoy, Mr. Holbrooke, is a wrecking ball. But
having said that, does that mean that you agree with some of the comments that McChrystal and Team America made regarding these people?
I agree to the extent that I have criticized their performance, but I obviously do not agree that they should have done that, and I agree that General McChrystal should have been relieved of his job, and I'm glad that General Petraeus is taking over the job. But here's the problem, Bruce, in a nutshell. In a nutshell, the problem is this, that if you tell the enemy that you are leaving at a date certain, then the enemy will obviously await you out. Sure. Your friends will accommodate to the region, and your enemies will be encouraged. That's just one of the fundamentals of warfare. Yeah. And the president made a little bit better comment yesterday. By the way, he had called me the day before to tell me about the appointment of General Petraeus. But the Rahm Emanuel last Sunday on Meet the Press said, have no doubt about it, it's a hard date. The vice president is quoted in a Jonathan Alter book saying a whole lot of people will be leaving in the middle of next July, July of 2011, quote, you can bet on it. So what we're doing, we're sounding an uncertain trumpet. And that means that Karzai, the president of Afghanistan, who's not the greatest, please don't get me wrong, but...
You're being kind at not the greatest, by the way.
is trying to accommodate to the Taliban, is changing his relationship, trying to improve it with Pakistan. And those leaders, those tribal leaders throughout that country are sitting on the fence because they don't want to face a situation where beginning next July we start to leave and they're stuck and they're going to get killed. Yeah. And so you can't pursue warfare without saying that your goal is success. In Iraq, after we succeeded, then we set a timetable for withdrawal. Right. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I'm so, yes, and I cannot send young Americans into a conflict that we are not giving them every chance to succeed.
Right. Well, here's my issue, and again, we've had a chance. We met for the first time recently. We talked. I hope that if nothing else, you know that I'm respectful not only of your service in Congress, but your service in the military. I honor that. I read your book. Your fascinating story. You and so many other people that have sacrificed so much. So I know when you talk about the sacrifice that men and women are making in the Middle East right now, it comes from the heart. Here's my question, and I mean this with as much sincerity and honesty as I can. Sure. I don't understand what winning in Afghanistan looks like. I understood what winning in Iraq looked like. I don't understand what a win in Afghanistan looks like, and I need to be convinced, sir, and I think a lot of other people do, that there is such a thing as a win. When do we party? When is there a ticker tape parade? When does the other side surrender? When's the armistice signed? Do you understand what I'm saying? Sure. What does it look like?
Could I remind you, there's been no armistice or surrender in Iraq either, but we are leaving, and we are leaving behind a fairly stable government and a country that would never return to being a nation that seeks to develop weapons of mass destruction, nor will it be a place where Al-Qaeda can take a hold.
Yes, sir.
In the case of Afghanistan, it is that our goal is to make sure that Afghanistan never returns to being a base for attacks on the United States and our allies. The way you achieve that goal is to have a government that governs fairly well, a populace that rejects the Taliban and their extremism. By the way, the Taliban has never been popular in Afghanistan.
No, they ruled kind of with an iron fist.
Yeah, as you know. And, of course, a sort of stable situation in relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan and its neighbors. It'll never be a perfect democracy. There will always be ethnic divisions, and that's one of your concerns, I know, and others. But by the way, when the surge started in Iraq, there was ethnic violence where hundreds of people were being killed every day.
Yes, sir.
Afghanistan has not reached nearly that level of ethnic dissent and conflict. So,
and I know that
there is a problem.
Yeah.
There is a serious problem with corruption in the Karzai government throughout, and there is a serious problem with tribal leaders who do not owe allegiance to the central government. Yeah, the counterinsurgency strategy works, but it has to be adopted to unique situations. General Petraeus, the guy who was beat up on and repudiated 3 years ago when he appeared before the various committees, he was repudiated by our now Secretary of State, by now our Vice President, and now our President. There's a certain irony with him coming back for his confirmation to take over in Afghanistan.
Yeah, the tone will be a little different this time. Now he's their guy. I get that. You made a comment, and by the way, the president made the same comments on the in the White House garden the other day, in the Rose Garden, that we can't allow Afghanistan, nor it can never be a base for attacks, a safe haven for terrorists. But isn't it true? And I realize once again you are so much more of an expert on this than me.
Bruce, you are informed and intelligent.
Well, but having said that, you get information I don't get. I don't get a daily intelligence briefing. How's that?
The best intelligence I get is the same source you do, going online and reading all the newspapers.
Fair enough. But we know, and we know because not only are we reasonably intelligent, but we know from the neighbors that the attacks being mounted in Afghanistan are being directed, funded, and supplied with men and materiel from the neighboring countries. If we're worried about a base of attacks and we don't want a safe haven for terrorists, well then, Pakistan needs to be on notice. Yemen needs to be on notice. You could argue Indonesia should be next on the list. And I just don't know if we have the stomach to do this, because my concern is, what you see is we pour 100,000 men and women, soldiers and Marines, into Afghanistan. The enemy retreats to the border, fires pot shots at us, and like you said, waiting for us to leave so they can come back.
Well, your point is excellent, and there is difficulties. I've heard some people say that the last war was in Iraq, this war is in Afghanistan, and the next one is in Yemen. Look, nothing succeeds like success. Nothing fails like failure, whether it be in sports or whether it be in warfare. If we can succeed there, and we've succeeded in Iraq, that will have a beneficial effect in the region, and hopefully we will be able to combat some of this radical Islamic extremism that springs from all over the world by having countries that the conditions do not allow for that to take place, or they're governed in such a way that people's allegiance is to the country. Look at the to the government. As you well know, look at the consequences of failure in Afghanistan or Iraq, and obviously they would be very severe.
I just worry that the people
Let me just finally summarize. We got to have an overall strategy of combating radical Islamic extremism, which is dedicated to the extinction of our nation, with an overall strategy of helping nations help themselves do these things, rather than. I believe that Iraq was a unique situation, and so was Afghanistan. No, I would not support going in full force into Yemen, although I certainly believe that we have made some progress there using other methods.
Yeah, fair point. And we get back to, again, that the Afghanistan and any other nation, we should say, have to help themselves. You can see that Iraq has obviously done a much better job of helping themselves through a centralized government, but you can also make the argument that Iraq had a centralized government prior to us showing up there. At least the concept works for people. I would argue that still in Afghanistan, when you get into the valleys and the tribes, the concept of a centralized government on them is completely lost. I mean, we're trying to convince them of something that they don't even know exists.
Well, I agree with you to a degree, except that there is certain ethnic groups, the Pashtun, the Tajiks, and others that are loyal as much to each other as they are to the government, to say the least. But if you have a government that provides goods and services to the people, that provides them with law and order and the things that people all over the world want from their governments, then obviously there will be a certain degree of loyalty to them. The key is to get the loyalty of the leaders of these various elements in the valleys and in the mountains that you talked about, gain their allegiance and their confidence, the same way we were able to get the Sunni leaders in Anbar province to orchestrate the Anbar awakening and came over to our side. I hope that sometime all of our listeners would have a chance to hear a lecture from General Petraeus, who I think is one of the great geniuses and charismatic leaders this nation's ever been gifted with.
Yes,
and I think his explanations of how you go about this business based on certain principles adopted to different nations can succeed. And look, 9/11 is always in our memory, and obviously we can never allow anything like that to take place, which, by the way, brings me, if I could, one word about our southern border.
Sir, yes, sir.
It's a matter of homeland security, and we are forgetting that in this debate about illegal immigrants, et cetera, et cetera. It's a matter of national security, and when the Mexican drug cartels are saying they're going to murder the police, tell the chief of police in Nogales, Arizona, they're going to murder his policeman, there's something seriously wrong.
We certainly are in agreement on that, sir. I want to finish up with this, and I know I'm running out of time, as I know you have pressed as well. This is kind of the bigger picture. You having served, you having worn the uniform, I'm curious as to your impression and see if I'm on the right page. I worry that, especially when it comes to Afghanistan, we don't, had it not been for the Rolling Stone article, we wouldn't be talking about Afghanistan today. We haven't been talking about it for a while. There are 100,000 men and women. There are millions of people here in this country who have friends, family, husbands, wives, brothers, daughters serving. They're missing them. I don't get a sense that we as a nation are sacrificing anything for this. I don't get a sense that it's on the radar. You see the public opinion polls of what people care about. Afghanistan doesn't finish in the top 10. They're worried more about, what happens on a reality show tomorrow. And I'm not using that as an excuse to not fight the war. I'm saying it's frustrating for someone like me who I'd like to think I'm trying to sympathize and empathize with those people serving in uniform. It's just not on people's radar here.
Well, you make a very valid point. I gave a speech on human rights in Iran a couple of weeks ago that I had spent literally weeks on, trying to say how we need to stand up for the human rights of the people in Iran. We'll never change their regime.
Right.
No, and it was applauded in certain circles. So literally the day of that speech, my person comes in and says, there's this person on Jersey Shore named Snooki that says that you wouldn't have raised taxes on tanning beds. So it's just clever. We tweeted, said, Snooki, I wouldn't raise taxes on tanning beds. By the way, be sure to wear sunscreen.
Yes.
It spread like it was viral. It was all over compared to the notice that I got on the Iranian human rights issue. You're right. But on the other side of the coin, the affection, appreciation, and love of these men and women who are serving on the part of American citizens, I'm so encouraged. I moved to tears to see the incredible appreciation that is given to these men and women who are serving. And yes, we probably don't spend enough time we certainly don't on the conflict itself, but thank God for the people of this country who are supporting them.
Yes,
that's
sir.
all. Maybe I'm digging for the pony, Bruce, but
I hear you.
I hear you. True.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. We're going to be watching intently next week during the confirmation hearings. I say that politely. There's no chance that General Petraeus won't be, but it'll be interesting as you, I know, and others will want to kind of bring up the debate about the mission. And I'll be watching intently because I'm not going to lie to you, sir. I'm still not convinced that we have a winning strategy, and I'm waiting for someone to really show it for me.
I hope I've convinced you. I will continue to try to make the effort to convince you, but I hope you are convinced, as I am, that if you go all in. You don't set a date when you're going to leave. It's based on conditions on the ground.
Agreed. Thank you for your time today, Senator McCain.
See you. Bye.
All right.